Hi, my name is Brooklyn Stallmer, and this is my oral proficiency presentation. And today we will be going into the YouTube interview with author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie called Banned in the USA. And this is regarding banning books, censorship, and childhood education. Who is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie? She is an author and feminist advocate who talks about many topics regarding race, identity, and gender. She's written many famous and influential books, such as The Purple Hibiscus and Half of a Yellow Sun. In this interview, Banned in the USA, she goes into what book banning is and why it has such a negative impact on education. And she also discusses why people are banning books. Now, what is book banning and why is it such a controversial topic? Book banning is essentially the process of a small group of about 11 people who make the decision on what is and isn't appropriate for the public to read. And this is based on very political and religious reasoning on why a lot of books are banned and trying to push a specific certain idea and mindset onto people. Just in the last year, more than 6,000 books have been banned, and according to the interview, 75% of books banned have LGBTQ plus characters or material, and 25% of books were banned for being anti-police. And with each year, the percentage of book banning increases. Banning books for containing certain material such as LGBTQ, sexuality, religion, and race is all for control and censorship. This is all for control over what people are allowed to consume and what information people are allowed to know. I think this is all to take away people's freedom of expression and ideas and identities. And I think this is a very totalitarian way of thinking. And book banning isn't just a new thing that's been happening. It's been happening for a long time by government officials trying to suppress ideas and opinions to maintain control over the population. And it's always been a way of censoring people. It's really just censoring people, marginalized people who they don't agree with their lifestyle or their opinions. I think the extreme book banning is also a infliction on people's First Amendment rights, because book banning, people who write books, that's their way of expressing themselves and pushing their own personal ideas onto the world. And by taking that away, you're taking away people's free speech and their ability to express themselves. And one of the most ironic things about book banning, which Adichie mentioned in her interview, is that none of the people who are responsible for book banning even read books. They don't read the books that they're banning. They just see that this book may contain a gay character and just say, we can't have that, or another book contains something about slavery and then they ban that. So it's not about they're reading something and they don't agree with it. They're not even reading it at all. I also want to talk about how book banning affects history, and it affects our ability to learn history. This affects how history is being taught and how people are allowed to teach history. For example, in Florida, some laws were passed to restrict how African American history can be taught and how they can talk about it. And it's important to learn history and learn the severity and the impact of certain historical events, because it can help us in the present not repeat those same horrible things that have happened. Another topic I want to discuss is how banning books affects children's education and children's ability to have access to knowledge. And Adichie mentions in the interview that children deserve the responsibility to have access to knowledge. Having access to knowledge makes you a more enlightened and intelligent person. Adichie in the interview goes into how a lot of political leaders will say that they don't want children to learn specific historical events such as slavery because it could make certain children feel uncomfortable. But as she says, history is fact, and it's okay to teach children uncomfortable historical facts if you teach it to them in the correct way, in a way that they can understand and comprehend without diminishing the severity of historical context. Additionally, it should be up to the parents for what they deem is and isn't okay for their kids to consume. That's the parents' responsibility. I don't think the school should have complete authority over what their students can learn, because at the end of the day, the parent, it's their responsibility. Finally, I want to just go into an overall sort of discussion on how banning books is destroying learning and is slowing down the ability for people to learn. Not just learning about history, but learning about themselves. A lot of books can teach people about themselves, and it can help people sort of build an identity for themselves. For example, this book called Genderqueer, which was published by Mia Kobabe, which is an autobiographical novel about being genderqueer. And they go into how they grew up in a sort of environment where it wasn't okay to have a queer identity or just be queer in general. And they go into how they learn to discover themselves and build their own identity for themselves. And this book, Genderqueer, became one of the most banned books in 2022 because of the topics discussed in the book. By taking this away, a lot of young queer children who may not have any role models or any knowledge of being queer, this type of book can help them build an identity for themselves. And by taking that away, you're sort of taking away people's identity. And again, with history, taking away certain books discussing historical events takes away people's ability to learn about history. I mean, history is very important to learning about how we ended up here in the present, and not allowing people to understand how we got here takes away people's ability to learn. And that's all we had time to talk about. Thank you for watching.